This key belonged to our mother, the orphan girls told the millionaire, but moments later, something terrible happens. Let me know what you thought of this story by giving it a rating from 0 to 10 and tell me what city you're watching from. I'd love to know if you enjoyed my story and get to know you better, so please subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The late afternoon sun bathed the cobblestone streets of the affluent Summit Ridge neighborhood in Havenwood as William Sampson parked his silver BMW in the garage of his colonial home. At 52, the coffee tycoon had built a solid empire that allowed him to live in comfort, but also with a loneliness he preferred not to admit. His routine was meticulous. Wake up at 5 in the morning, review company reports until 7, have coffee and toast on the porch while observing the rolling Virginia hills, and always return home at 6 in the evening. On that March day, however, something different awaited him. He had barely gotten out of the car when two small figures emerged from the growing darkness, running towards him with a determination that contrasted with their bare feet and dirty clothes. They were two identical girls, twins of about 4 years old, with tangled brown hair and large eyes shining with tears. "Sir! Sir!" one of them shouted, her voice hoarse from crying so much. "The key! Mommy's key!" William stopped, confused, holding the brown leather briefcase he carried every day. The children came closer, and he could better see their thin faces marked by hunger and exhaustion. One of them pointed insistently at something he was carrying, but he couldn't identify what. "What are you girls talking about?" he asked, crouching down to their level, his paternal instinct awakening even though he had never had children. "The golden key," sobbed the second girl. "Identical to the first in every way. It has the letter A engraved on it. It's our mommy's." William frowned and checked his pockets, finding the key ring he always carried. Among them, an old ornate golden key stood out, with the letter A elegantly engraved in the center. It was the key he had inherited from his grandmother Anne 15 years ago when she passed away in a car accident on the winding local roads. He had always carried it as a memento, never knowing exactly what it opened. "This key?" he asked, showing it to the girls. The crying that followed was heartbreaking. The two children hugged each other, trembling, and began to speak at the same time between uncontrollable sobs. "It's just like Mommy's. She always wore it around her neck. She said it was very important, that one day we would understand." William felt a shiver run down his spine. He looked at the girls again, now paying attention to their faces. There was something familiar about them, a subtle resemblance he couldn't place, but that stirred something deep in his memory. "What are your names?" he asked gently. "I'm Olivia," said the first, wiping her nose on the torn sleeve of her faded pink t-shirt. "And I'm Sophia," added the second, her brown eyes identical to her sister's, fixed on the key William still held. "And where is your mother now?" The silence that followed was heavy. The girls looked at each other, a silent communication passing between them. Finally, Olivia spoke, her voice so low that William had to lean in to hear. "Mommy disappeared a long time ago, 6 months. She left for work and never came back," added Sophia, her voice breaking. "We had to leave the orphanage because it was too full. Now we live on the street, but we look for Mommy's key every day because she said it was important." William felt his chest tighten. He looked around and noticed it was already getting dark. The streets of the upscale neighborhood were safe, but two children alone in the darkness was not something his conscience could ignore. "How do you know where I live?" he asked. "We've seen you many times," answered Olivia. "We hang around here sometimes looking for food. And today we saw the key when you got out of the car," completed Sophia. "What was your mommy's name?" "Adrian Sanders," they both said at the same time. The name echoed in William's mind, but he couldn't make any immediate connection. Adrian Sanders. He didn't remember knowing anyone with that name, but something at the back of his memory stirred, like a memory trying to surface from murky waters. "You said she worked? Where?" "She cleaned buildings at night," explained Olivia. "Lots of different buildings. She always came back very late and very tired," added Sophia. "But she always sang to us before we went to sleep, until one night she didn't come back." William looked at the key in his hand again. The coincidence was disturbing. His grandmother Anne had been a mysterious woman in the last years of her life, always talking about responsibilities and inheritances he never fully understood. She owned several properties in the city, some of which he only discovered after she was gone. "Where did you live with your mother?" he asked. "On Flower Street," answered Olivia, "in a small yellow house, with a garden in front," completed Sophia. Flower Street. William knew that area of Havenwood's historic downtown well. His grandmother had mentioned a property there, but he had never investigated it much. After she passed away, his accountant Sebastian Fisher had taken care of all the family's real estate dealings, and William had always blindly trusted the man who had worked for his family for decades. "Do you want to come in for something to eat?" he offered, unable to leave two hungry children on the street. The girls hesitated, looking at each other with the caution that life on the streets had taught them. But hunger spoke louder, and they shyly nodded their heads, while he prepared simple sandwiches in the kitchen. Watching the twins sit at the dining table with wide eyes at the luxury of the house, William couldn't stop thinking about the key. And more than that, he couldn't ignore the growing feeling that this meeting was not a simple coincidence. There was something bigger happening here, something that connected his family's past with the desperate present of these two girls. And no matter how much he tried to rationalize it, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life was about to change, irreversibly. William watched the twins devour the ham and cheese sandwiches as if they hadn't eaten in days, which was probably true. Olivia and Sophia kept their eyes down, focused on the food, but he could see their little hands trembling slightly. The reality of the girls' situation hit him with full force. Two 4-year-old children surviving alone on the streets for 6 months. "Girls," he said softly, sitting at the table with them, "can you tell me more about your mother?" "What was her full name?" "Adrienne Sanders," repeated Olivia, calmer now after satisfying her hunger. "She was 31, added Sophia, "because she celebrated her birthday 2 months before she disappeared, and she always wore the golden key around her neck." "Always," they both confirmed at the same time. "She said it was very important, that it came from a very good family," explained Olivia, "and that one day we would understand why it was special," completed Sophia. William felt his heart race. He picked up the golden key again and examined it under the kitchen light. The letter A was perfectly engraved in the center, surrounded by small ornamental details he had never noticed before. It was clearly fine craftsmanship, probably made decades ago. "Do you know where your mother worked exactly? Which buildings she cleaned?" The girls looked at each other, their foreheads furrowed in concentration. "She mentioned many names," said Olivia slowly. "Buildings downtown. Sometimes she talked about a big company," remembered Sophia, "with a strange name." "What do you mean, a strange name?" "It started with Sam." "Sam something," tried Olivia. William's blood ran cold. "Samson? Samson Coffee?" The girl's eyes lit up with recognition. "Yes, Samson Coffee," they exclaimed together. "She always came home very late when she cleaned there," said Olivia, "and always very tired," added Sophia. William stood up abruptly from the table, walking to the kitchen window. His company. Adrienne Sanders had worked at his company the night she disappeared. How did he not know this? How was her name not on any report he had seen? "Girls, do you remember the last time you saw your mother? What did she say when she left?" The silence that followed was different from the previous ones. The two children lowered their eyes, and William could see tears forming again. "She was very nervous," whispered Olivia. "More nervous than usual," confirmed Sophia. "She was talking to herself, pacing around the house. She said she had discovered something important, that she was going to do the right thing, and that maybe she had to go away for a while, but that she would come back for us. She promised she would come back." William returned to the table, crouching beside the girls' chairs. Did she say what she had discovered? The twins looked at each other again, that silent communication happening between them. "She found papers," Olivia said finally. "Important papers," added Sophia, "about a house, our house. She said someone was lying, that our house wasn't rented, that it was really ours." The pieces began to fit together in William's mind like a macabre puzzle. Flower Street, a property of his grandmother's that he had never visited. Sebastian Fisher taking care of all the real estate. Adrienne discovering something about documents. "Do you know the name Sebastian?" he asked carefully. The fear that instantly filled the girls' faces was answer enough. "The man with glasses," whispered Olivia, hiding her face in her hands. "He came to our house," said Sophia, trembling. "The day before Mommy disappeared. They argued a lot. He was shouting. Mommy was crying. He made her sign papers. And he said that if she told anyone, bad things would happen to us." The anger that took hold of William was instant and visceral. Sebastian Fisher, his family's trusted accountant for over 20 years. The man who had handled all the business after his grandmother's death. Always helpful, always efficient, always trustworthy. "Girls, you are safe here," he said in the firmest voice he could manage. "No one is going to hurt you. I promise." That night, after settling the twins in the guest room with clean clothes he improvised by cutting up some of his t-shirts, William locked himself in his office. He opened the safe, where he kept all the important family documents, and began to review every paper related to his grandmother's properties. It was almost 2 in the morning when he found what he was looking for, a yellowish folder hidden at the bottom of the safe that he had never fully opened. Inside, documents dated 15 years ago, shortly before Anne's death. Her handwriting was shaky but still legible in letters addressed to him. "My dear grandson," one of them read, "there are things about our family you need to know. Properties I have left to specific people. Sebastian has all the details, but I trust he will do the right thing when I am no longer here. The house on Flower Street has been left to the Sanders family, descendants of my dear friend Catherine. It is important that this is respected." William's hands trembled as he read. His grandmother had left clear instructions about the property, and Sebastian had completely ignored her wishes. Worse than that, he had rented the house to the very family that should have been the owners, charging Adrienne Sanders rent for a house that was already hers by right. He continued reading other documents and found something even more disturbing. Birth records, old certificates, family trees scribbled by his grandmother's hand. And there, clearly marked, was the name Catherine Sanders as a distant cousin of Anne. Adrienne Sanders wasn't just a tenant. She was family, and Sebastian knew it. The phone rang on the office desk, the shrill sound cutting through the silence of the early morning. William looked at the caller ID and saw the name he most feared seeing at that moment, Sebastian Fisher. "William," came the accountant's voice from the other end of the line, tense and urgent. "We need to talk, now." "It's 2 in the morning, Sebastian." "I know, but I heard you're taking care of 2 children. That could be problematic." The veiled threat in the voice of the man he had always trusted made William's blood boil. Problematic for whom? For all of us, William. There are things you don't understand. Things your grandmother wanted to protect you from knowing. What kind of things? Come to my office tomorrow morning, alone, and take the children back to where you found them, for everyone's good. The call was cut, leaving William alone in the heavy silence of his office, with the terrible certainty that he had just uncovered the tip of an iceberg of lies that had shaped his entire life. The morning arrived with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee that William prepared automatically, his mechanical movements contrasting with the turmoil of thoughts that had kept him awake. Olivia and Sophia came downstairs hand in hand, still wearing their improvised t-shirt pajamas, their tangled hair forming brown halos around their angelic faces. "Good morning, Mr. William," they said in unison, a touching politeness that Adrian had managed to teach them even in adversity. "Good morning, girls. Did you sleep well?" "It was the first time in a long time we slept in a real bed," admitted Olivia, climbing onto a kitchen chair. "And without being afraid someone would wake us up," added Sophia, accepting the glass of milk William offered her. As the twins ate their breakfast, William observed their gestures, the way they moved in perfect sync, as if they were two halves of the same being. And once again, that sense of familiarity bothered him. There was something in their eyes, in the shape of their faces, that stirred a distant memory he couldn't access. "Girls, I need to go out for a few hours today. Would you be okay here alone?" The panic that immediately filled the children's faces made him rethink the question. "You're not coming back?" asked Olivia, her eyes filling with tears. "Like Mommy?" completed Sophia, her voice breaking. "No, no," William hurried to say, kneeling beside them. "I will be back, I promise. But I need to sort out some things about your mother, things that might help find her." "Do you believe she's still alive?" asked Olivia with desperate hope. The question hit William like a punch. He had automatically assumed Adrienne was dead, but the children clearly still held out hope of seeing her again. "I believe we need to find out the truth," he answered diplomatically. "And for that, I need to talk to some people." He decided to take the girls to his neighbor's house, Mrs. Carmen, a 68-year-old lady who had raised 5 children and always showed a special affection for kids. He explained the situation briefly, omitting the darker details, and Mrs. Carmen agreed to look after the twins without asking too many questions. "They're identical," she commented, watching Olivia and Sophia play shyly in her yard, "and they have familiar eyes. They remind me of someone I know, but I can't quite place who." The comment echoed in William's mind all the way to the city centre. He had decided to go to Flower Street first, to see the property his grandmother had left to the Sanders family before meeting with Sebastian. Flower Street was a narrow road in the historic heart of Havenwood, lined with colonial houses that resisted time with worn dignity. The house at number 47, where the girls had lived with Adrienne, stood out for its peeling yellow paint and the small front garden that was now abandoned, with weeds growing among the dead flowers. William parked in front and observed the property. It was a simple but charming house, with 2 windows in the front and a blue door that had seen better days. He got out of the car and walked to the gate, noticing it was locked with a brand new padlock, clearly placed recently. "Can I help you?" A voice came from behind him. William turned and found a woman of about 45, thin and with a cautious expression, watching him from the window of the neighboring house. "Good morning. I'm William Sampson. I'm trying to find information about the family that lived here." "Oh, the Sanders," said the woman, her expression softening slightly. "Adrienne and the twins. What a terrible tragedy. Did you know them well?" "Adrienne was a good neighbor, hard-working, always struggling to provide for the girls. But she was always worried, especially in the last few months before. Well, before she disappeared." "Worried about what?" The woman looked around nervously before answering. She found something out about the house. Old documents she found in the attic. She said someone was deceiving her, charging her rent for a property that was already hers by inheritance. And what happened after she found that out? She started getting strange visits. A man with glasses, always very well dressed, who would come here to argue with her. Terrible shouting. The girls were terrified. "Do you know this man's name?" "Sebastian, I think. Adrian always said that name when she was angry. William's stomach churned. Sebastian had indeed threatened Adrian, forced her to keep quiet about her legitimate rights to the property. And the night she disappeared, did you see anything? The neighbor hesitated, looking around again. I saw Adrian leaving very late, almost midnight. She was carrying a small suitcase and looked terrified. Before getting into the taxi, she looked at the house, at the windows where the girls were sleeping, and I've never seen someone so torn between leaving and staying. She got into a taxi? Alone? No. There was someone in the front passenger seat. A man. I couldn't see his face clearly, but from the silhouette, it looked like the same one who used to come here to argue with her. William felt his hands tremble. Sebastian hadn't just threatened Adrian, he had been present on the night of her disappearance, possibly forcing her to leave town. And the children? They were left alone? For 3 days. I brought them food, but on the 4th day, people from social services came to get them. They said they were going to a temporary shelter until they found their mother, but they ended up on the streets. The shelter got overcrowded. I heard they sent several children away. A tragedy. 2 girls so young, so polite. William thanked the neighbor and went back to the car, but he couldn't stop looking at the yellow house. He decided to walk around the property, looking for a way in. In the back, he found a slightly open window that led to the kitchen. The inside of the house told a story of sudden abandonment. Dishes were still in the sink. The girls' small clothes were scattered on the floor. Simple toys made from recycled materials were in every corner, but it was in the master bedroom that William found what he didn't expect. On the dresser, a framed photograph showed a smiling Adrian Sanders wearing the golden key around her neck. But it wasn't just that caught his attention. Next to the photo, there was another picture, an old black and white photograph of 2 young women, one of them clearly being his grandmother Anne in her youth, and the other. William picked up the photo with trembling hands. The other woman in the photograph had the same face, the same eyes, the same features as Adrian Sanders. On the back it was written in neat handwriting, Anne and Catherine Sanders, 1960, friends forever. Catherine Sanders, the name from his grandmother's documents, the distant cousin who was supposed to have inherited the house, and there was the proof. Adrienne was indeed Catherine's granddaughter, had a legitimate right to the property, and Sebastian knew it all along. But there was something more disturbing in the photograph. Catherine Sanders had features that William recognized from somewhere else. Features he saw every day in the mirror. The shape of the eyes, the shape of the face, the jawline. With his heart racing, William put the photograph in his pocket and left the house, his mind racing with a possibility he didn't dare fully consider. He drove to Sebastian's office with a determination he hadn't felt in years, knowing he was about to confront not just a man who had betrayed his trust, but possibly someone who knew secrets about his own origin that had been hidden for decades. The building where Sebastian kept his accounting office was in Havenwood's commercial center, a modest 3-story building with a glass facade. William climbed the stairs, each step increasing his apprehension about what he was about to discover. Sebastian's secretary, a young woman with a nervous expression, informed him that he was waiting for William in his office. The accountant's office was spacious and well-organized, with shelves full of folders and a mahogany desk that dominated the room. Sebastian Fisher, at 67, was still an imposing man, with gold-rimmed glasses and an impeccable suit. But William immediately noticed the tension in his shoulders and the sweat on his forehead. "William," Sebastian greeted, rising from behind the desk without extending his hand. "Thank you for coming. I didn't have a choice from what I understood of your call." "Sit down, please. We have a lot to talk about." William remained standing, crossing his arms. I'd rather stand, and I'd rather you start by explaining what you did with Adrian Sanders. Sebastian's face turned visibly pale. He sat back down, taking off his glasses and nervously wiping them with a handkerchief. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me, Sebastian, not after 20 years of trust. William took the photograph out of his pocket and placed it on the desk. Explain this, and explain why you were charging a woman rent for a house that was already hers by right. Sebastian looked at the photograph and his face completely fell apart. His hands started to shake and he had to hold onto the edge of the desk to steady himself. Where did you find this? In the house on Flower Street. The house my grandmother left to the Sanders family and that you turned into an illegal source of income. William, you don't understand the complexity of the situation. Then explain it to me. William exploded, slamming his hand on the desk. Explain why a woman and 2 children were paying rent for a property that was already theirs. Explain why this woman mysteriously disappeared after discovering the truth. And explain why 2 4-year-old girls have been living on the streets for 6 months. Sebastian got up unsteadily and walked to the window, turning his back to William. When he finally spoke, his voice was broken. Your grandmother left very specific instructions about the properties, not just about who should inherit them, but about other things as well. What other things? About you, William, about your true origin. The silence that followed was deafening. William felt as if the floor had disappeared from under his feet. What are you talking about? Sebastian turned slowly, tears streaming down his aged face. You are not the biological son of the Sampsons, William. You were adopted when you were 2 years old. That's a lie. Your biological mother was Catherine Sanders, the woman in the photograph next to your grandmother. William's world instantly crumbled. He leaned against the wall, feeling nauseous, his legs failing. You're lying. My parents, your adoptive parents, loved you more than anything. Anne did too. But she always knew the truth, and she always worried about taking care of the Sanders family, knowing they were your biological relatives. Why? Why did no one ever tell me? Because Catherine asked them not to. She was very ill when you were born. She couldn't take care of you. Anne and her husband couldn't have their own children. It was an arrangement that benefited everyone, except that Catherine passed away when you were 5, and Anne decided to keep the secret. William looked at the photograph again, seeing with new eyes the resemblance between himself and Catherine Sanders, the explanation for the familiarity he felt when looking at Olivia and Sophia. They weren't just lost children he had decided to help. They were his grandnieces, his biological family. And Adrienne found this out? She found documents in the attic of the house, birth certificates, correspondence between Anne and Catherine, adoption records. Everything was there, stored for decades, and you threatened her to keep quiet. I tried to explain that it was a delicate situation, that you didn't know the truth, but she was determined to claim her rights to the property. She said she needed the security of home ownership to raise her daughters, so you decided to make her disappear. No, Sebastian despaired. I would never hurt Adrienne. I offered her money to move out of town quietly, a considerable sum to start a new life somewhere else, and she accepted. She refused. She said she wouldn't abandon her daughters for any amount of money. That's when. When what? When I told her that if she tried to expose the truth about your adoption, it could destroy you, your company, your reputation, everything you've built. She was torn between protecting her daughters and protecting you. William closed his eyes, trying to process the information. Adrienne had discovered he was family, but had been manipulated into believing that this revelation would harm him. Where is she now, Sebastian? I don't know. I swear I don't know. That night, she just disappeared. She left the house keys in my office with a note saying she was leaving and that I should take care of the property until her daughters grew up. You're lying. I'm not. William, You have to believe me. I made terrible mistakes. I kept secrets I shouldn't have, but I would never hurt Adrian." William opened his eyes and stared at the man who had been like an uncle to him for 2 decades. There was something in Sebastian's expression, a genuine desperation that made him believe he was telling the truth about not knowing Adrian's whereabouts. "But you know something else. I can see it in your eyes." Sebastian hesitated for a long moment before going to a file cabinet and pulling out a folder. 2 weeks after Adrian's disappearance, I received an anonymous call. A nervous female voice saying that a woman matching her description was working on a farm on the outskirts of 3 Rivers using a fake name. "And you didn't investigate." I was scared. Scared that if I found her, the whole truth would come out. Scared of losing your trust, of ruining your life. So you decided to leave 2 orphan children on the streets while you protected your own interests. I didn't know the girls were on the streets. I thought they were safe in the orphanage. William took the folder from Sebastian's hands and opened it. Inside were notes about the farm in 3 Rivers, an address, even a phone number. How many properties did you defraud, Sebastian? How many families did you deceive over the years? Just the one on Flower Street, I swear. I fulfilled Anne's other instructions faithfully. Why was this one different? Sebastian sat down heavily in his chair, looking as if he had aged 10 years in a few minutes. Because when Catherine passed away, she left a letter for Anne asking that, if the property were ever claimed by her descendants, the money from the accumulated rent over the years be used to help you, to invest in your education, in your company. It was a way for her to take care of the son she couldn't raise. And what did you use that money for? To invest in Samson Coffee in the early years, when you were just starting out, facing financial difficulties. Part of your company's success was built with the money that should have gone to the Sanders family. The final revelation hit William like a physical blow. Not only had he been deprived of knowing his biological family, but he had prospered using resources that should have benefited Adrienne and her daughters. The twins had suffered in poverty while he lived in luxury built, in part, with money that was rightfully theirs. "How much?" he asked in a hoarse voice. 15 years of rent, with interest. Approximately $400,000. William tucked the folder under his arm and headed for the door. "William, where are you going?" "To get my family." "What are you going to do about all this?" William stopped at the door and looked at the man who had been a father figure to him for decades. "I'm going to find Adrienne. I'm going to bring my family home. And I'm going to do everything in my power to repair the damage you caused. And me? With you, Sebastian, I don't know yet. But our relationship ends today." The drive back home was a blur for William. His hands trembled on the steering wheel as he processed the devastating revelations of the last few moments. At 52, he discovered that his entire identity had been built on carefully crafted lies. Catherine Sanders, the woman in the photograph, was his biological mother. Olivia and Sophia were not just 2 needy girls he had decided to help. They were his blood relatives. When he arrived at Mrs. Carmen's house, he found the twins playing in the yard with rag dolls, the kind lady had improvised from fabric scraps. Seeing him, they both ran towards him with genuine smiles, the first display of pure joy he had witnessed since he met them. "Mr. William," they exclaimed together, hugging his legs. "You came back," said Olivia, looking up at him with bright eyes. "You promised you'd come back." "And you did," added Sophia. The tightness in William's chest intensified. These children had been abandoned so many times that a simple return had become a cause for celebration. "Of course I came back. And I have news about your mother." The girls' faces lit up with instant hope. "Did you find her?" asked Olivia, holding his hand tightly. "Not yet, but I found out where she might be. And I found out other things too. Important things about our family." "Our family?" questioned Sophia, frowning. William thanked Mrs. Carman and took the girls home, knowing he would have to choose his words carefully to explain a situation he himself was still trying to understand. On the way, he stopped at a children's clothing store and bought several outfits for the twins, who watched everything in amazement as if they were in a dream. "Why are you buying so many clothes for us?" asked Olivia as she tried on a light blue dress. "Because you're going to stay with me for a while, until we find your mother." "And after?" questioned Sophia, wearing a pink outfit. "We'll see after, but you will never sleep on the street again. I promise you that." That night, after a quiet dinner where the girls ate with appetite for the second time in months, William took them to the living room and sat on the sofa between them. He had spent hours thinking about how to approach the subject in a way that 4-year-olds could understand. "Girls, remember when you showed me the golden key and said it was just like your mummy's?" "We remember," they answered in unison. "Well, I found out today that our families are connected. A long time ago, my family and your mummy's family were very close, almost as if they were the same family." Olivia tilted her head, trying to process the information. "What do you mean, Mr. William?" "It means that, in a way, we are relatives, you and me." Sophia's eyes widened. "Are you our cousin?" "Something like that, yes." "Is that why you helped us?" asked Olivia. "I helped you because you needed help, but now I understand why I felt a special connection to you from the very first moment." The girls looked at each other with that characteristic silent communication before snuggling closer to him on the sofa. "Does that mean you won't send us away?" asked Sophia with a vulnerability that broke William's heart. "Never. You are my family now." The next morning, William woke up determined. He called his company and cancelled all his appointments for the week, delegating responsibilities to his trusted manager, Paula Mendez. He explained that he had an urgent family situation to resolve and that he would be away for a few days. Then, he searched the internet for information about the farm in 3 Rivers, whose address Sebastian had provided. The Santa Clara farm was a medium-sized property specializing in coffee cultivation, located about an hour from Havenwood. The website showed rolling green fields and a modest main house, but didn't provide much information about the employees. He decided he would go there that same day, but faced a dilemma: take the girls or leave them in a safe place. On one hand, if he really found Adrienne, it would be important for her daughters to be present. On the other, if the situation was more complicated than he imagined, he didn't want to expose them to more trauma. He opted for a middle ground. He called Paula and asked if she could look after the twins for a few hours. Paula, a 35-year-old mother of 2, readily agreed, intrigued by the situation, but too respectful to ask invasive questions. "If Mommy is there, will you bring her back?" asked Olivia as William dropped them off at Paula's house. "If she's there and wants to come, yes. And if she doesn't want to?" questioned Sophia, showing a worrying maturity for her age. "Then we'll talk and understand why." The drive to 3 Rivers was tense. William mentally rehearsed different scenarios. Adrienne might not be there, she might be there, but refuse to come back. She might be in a situation that didn't allow her return. Worse still, she might be there against her will, which would imply much more serious issues. Santa Clara Farm was at the end of a dirt road that wound through coffee plantations. The property was larger than it looked in the online photos, with several smaller houses scattered around the land, in addition to the main house. William parked near the administration office and was greeted by a sturdy man of about 50 who introduced himself as Joe Carter, the manager. "Good morning, I'm William Sampson. I'm looking for information about an employee who might be working here." "Adrienne Sanders." Joe Carter's face immediately closed off. "We don't have any employee with that name. Maybe she's using another name. A 31-year-old woman, brown hair, dark eyes." "Sir, I already told you we don't have anyone with that profile working here." The insistence in the denial made William suspect the man was lying. There was nervousness in his voice. a bodily rigidity that suggested knowledge of the situation. "Can I speak with the owner? He's not on the farm today. When will he be?" "I wouldn't know." William realized he wouldn't get information through direct means. He thanked him politely and said he would come back another day. But instead of leaving, he parked the car a few miles from the farm and returned on foot. Approaching through the plantations, the property was extensive, and it took him more than an hour walking among the coffee plants to explore different areas. It was when he approached the smaller houses intended for employees that he heard something that made his heart race. A female voice singing a familiar melody. It was the same song the twins hummed when they were sad. The melody Adrian used to sing to them before bed. William followed the sound to a small white house at the back of the property where a woman was hanging clothes in the yard. Even from a distance, he recognized the silhouette. It was Adrian Sanders, visibly thinner and with shorter hair, but undoubtedly the twins' mother. She wore simple work clothes and moved carefully, as if in pain. William approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. When he was just a few feet away, Adrian turned and saw him. Her reaction was immediate. She dropped the laundry basket and backed away, her face filled with panic. "Please," she said in a trembling voice, "I haven't told anyone anything. I didn't talk about the documents, about anything. Please, leave me alone." "Adrian," William said softly, holding up his hands in a sign of peace, "I didn't come here to hurt you. I came to take you home, to your daughters." Adrian's face transformed upon hearing William's words. Fear gave way to confusion, then to desperate hope, and finally to the tears she had held back for months. "My daughters," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Olivia and Sophia, are they okay? Where are they?" "They're safe with me. They're well cared for, fed with clean clothes," replied William, approaching slowly. "But they miss their mother." Adrienne collapsed, falling to her knees on the dirt ground. 6 months of guilt, fear, and longing exploded in convulsive sobs that shook her entire thin body. William knelt beside her, offering the support she clearly needed. "I didn't want to abandon them," Adrienne cried. "I never wanted to. But he said if I stayed, something bad would happen to you too. That I was putting everyone in danger." "Who said that, Adrienne?" "The man with glasses. Sebastian. He said I had discovered things that could destroy your company, your reputation. That if I stayed and tried to claim the house, you would lose everything you've built." William felt the familiar anger rise, but controlled it to focus on what really mattered, comforting the woman who had sacrificed everything to protect a family she didn't even really know. "Adrienne, look at me," he said softly, lifting her face by the shoulders. "Sebastian lied to you about everything. I know the truth now. I know about our family, about Catherine Sanders, about the house that is yours by right, and more importantly, I know you are my cousin." Adrienne's eyes widened, slowly processing the words. "Your cousin? What do you mean?" "Catherine Sanders was my biological mother. I was adopted by the Sampson family when I was 2. You and I are blood relatives, and your daughters are my grandnieces." Adrienne was silent for a long moment, studying William's face with a new perspective. Gradually, the resemblance she had always felt, but never been able to place, became clear. "That's why," she murmured. "That's why I always felt like I knew you from somewhere when I cleaned your office. I always had the feeling I had seen you before. You worked at my company, 3 nights a week, for 2 years, always very late, when no one was there. I saw your photograph in the president's office and I always felt connected somehow." The puzzle continued to assemble in William's mind. Adrienne had discovered the documents about the inheritance, had realized the family connection, and was probably planning to approach him to tell the truth when Sebastian interfered. "Adrienne, you need to come with me now. Your daughters need you. I can't." Fear returned to her eyes. "If I go back, he will carry out his threats. He will destroy you. He can't threaten me with anything anymore. I know everything now." and he will pay for what he did to our family. You don't understand, Adrian insisted, getting up and pacing nervously. It's not just about the house documents. It's about other things too. Things I discovered while I was cleaning. What kind of things? Adrian hesitated, looking around as if she feared being overheard, even in that isolated place. I saw documents on his desk sometimes. Contracts, bank transfers. Sebastian wasn't just defrauding our property, William. He was embezzling money from several of your company's accounts for years. The revelation hit William like a punch. If Adrian was right, Sebastian was not just a corrupt accountant. He was a criminal who had been stealing from the company for decades. Do you have proof of that? I photographed some documents with my old phone before I ran away. But after I got here, I had to destroy the device. I was afraid of being tracked. But you remember the details? Some. Monthly transfers to his personal accounts, fake invoices from non-existent suppliers, amounts deducted from taxes that were never paid, hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years. The extent of Sebastian's betrayal was becoming clearer and clearer. Not only had he stolen from the Sanders family, but he had used his position of trust to systematically defraud William's company. That's why you ran away. It wasn't just because of the threat about the house. He said that if I told him anything about the documents I saw, he would find a way to frame me for the thefts, that he would make it look like I was involved, since I worked cleaning the office and had access to the files. And you believed him? I was desperate, alone with 2 small daughters, no money for lawyers, no one to protect me. When he offered me money to leave town quietly, you accepted. No, Adrian despaired. I would never abandon my daughters for money, but he said that if I didn't disappear voluntarily, he would have me arrested and the girls would be put up for permanent adoption, that I would never see them again. The level of Sebastian's manipulation was astounding. He had used Adrian's motherly love against her, forcing her to choose between staying with her daughters and risking losing them forever. How did you get here? He brought me. He said he had a contact at a farm where I could work under a false name until things calmed down. He promised that after a few months, when you were no longer interested in the matter, I could discreetly return to get the girls. But that never happened. He stopped answering my calls after the first month. And when I tried to contact him through the farm, they said they didn't know any Sebastian Fisher. He abandoned you here. Worse than that, I later found out that the farm owner owes favors to Sebastian. I can't leave without permission. I don't receive a full salary. They say I'm paying for living expenses. It's almost as if it's slave labor, completed William, anger boiling in his chest. I didn't want to use that word, but yes. William looked around the small house where Adrian was living. It was clean but Spartan, with minimal furniture and clear signs that there were no luxuries or comforts. The woman who had sacrificed everything to protect her family was being exploited and held against her will. You're coming with me now, he said firmly. It's not a question. And if they try to stop us, leave that to me. Adrian ran inside the house and came back with a small bag containing her few belongings. As they were leaving through the back of the property, avoiding the central administration, she stopped and held William's arm. There's one more thing you need to know, she said, her voice heavy with emotion. About your daughters. About Olivia and Sophia. What about them? During all these months away from them, I kept thinking about how to explain my absence when I returned, and I realized something that you may not have noticed yet. What? They are not just your grandnieces, William. Because of our family connection, they are also your... Well, it's complicated to explain, but by lineage, you have an even stronger blood connection than I initially imagined. What do you mean? Catherine Sanders wasn't just your adoptive grandmother's cousin. From the records I found, she was her half-sister. Daughters of the same father, different mothers. William's world swayed again. If Adrian was right, the family connection was even deeper than he had imagined. That means Olivia and Sophia aren't just your distant nieces. By lineage, they are practically your granddaughters. Adrian paused, struggling with the words, I am practically your sister. As they walked quickly through the plantations towards the car, William processed this new revelation. He hadn't just found a lost family, he had discovered that the family he was looking for was closer than he had ever imagined. The drive back to Havenwood was fraught with emotion and tension. Adrian remained silent most of the time, watching the familiar landscape through the car window as if seeing it all for the first time. Her hands trembled constantly, and William noticed how she started at every loud noise or sudden movement from other vehicles. "Will they recognize me?" she asked suddenly, breaking the silence that had lasted for miles. "Of course they will. They talk about you every day," William replied, looking at her in the rearview mirror. "But I've changed so much. I've lost weight, I cut my hair." Adrian touched her short hair insecurely. "What if they're angry at me for leaving?" "They won't be angry. They are children who love their mother unconditionally. 6 months is a long time in the life of a 4-year-old. They might have thought I abandoned them on purpose." Adrienne's voice broke on the last word, and William had to pull the car over to the shoulder to console her. She was having a panic attack, breathing rapidly and trembling uncontrollably. "Adrienne, take a deep breath," he said, holding her hands. "Your daughters are eager to see you. When I told them I had news about you, their eyes lit up in a way I hadn't seen since I found them. What if I can't be a good mother again? What if I can't protect them like I should have before? You were always a good mother. What happened wasn't your fault. You were the victim of an unscrupulous man who used your love for your daughters against you." Adrienne took several deep breaths, slowly calming down. When they were ready to continue the journey, she asked a question William had feared would come. "What are we going to do about Sebastian? He won't just accept that I'm back. And now that you know everything, I will deal with Sebastian appropriately. But first, the important thing is to reunite our family." When they arrived at Paula's house, the sun was already beginning to set, painting the sky orange and pink. William asked Adrienne to wait in the car for a few minutes while he prepared the girls for the reunion. "Olivia! Sophia!" he called as he entered the house. "I have a surprise for you." The twins ran to him as they had the night before. Paula followed them, curious to finally understand the mystery surrounding these children. "What surprise?" the girls asked in unison. "Do you remember when I said I was going to look for your mother?" Both of their eyes widened instantly. "Did you find her?" whispered Olivia. "Is she here?" added Sophia, barely able to contain her excitement. "She's outside in the car. But before you see her, I need you to understand something. Your mother has been through some very difficult times. She's a little different, thinner, more nervous. But she's the same mother who loves you more than anything in the world." The girls didn't wait for further explanation. They ran to the door and saw Adrian slowly getting out of the car. For a moment, mother and daughters stood still, watching each other from a distance, as if they couldn't believe this moment was real. Then Olivia was the first to move. "Mommy!" she shouted, running towards Adrian. "Mommy, Mommy!" echoed Sophia, following her sister. The reunion was intense and emotional. Adrian knelt and opened her arms, receiving both daughters in a hug that lasted several minutes. The three of them cried and laughed at the same time, words of love and apology mingling in a cacophony of emotion. "I missed you so much," sobbed Adrian, covering her daughters' faces with kisses. "Every day, every night, I didn't stop thinking about you for a second." "We missed you too," said Olivia, clinging to her mother's neck. "We thought you had gone to heaven like Daddy," added Sophia. "I will never leave you again." "Never again," promised Adrian, her voice firm despite the tears. Paula watched the scene with tears in her eyes, moved by the family reunion. William was also emotional, watching his new family come back together after months of painful separation. That night, after a quiet dinner where Adrienne could barely eat from the emotion of seeing her daughters healthy and well cared for, the four people who now formed an improvised family gathered in the living room to talk. "Mommy," said Olivia. Sitting on Adrienne's lap, Uncle William said, "You are from the same family. Is that true?" Adrienne looked at William, seeking guidance on how much to explain to such young children. "It's true," she answered carefully. "Uncle William is like a brother to Mommy. That's why he took such good care of you when I wasn't here." "So he's our real uncle?" asked Sophia. "For real," confirmed William. "And you are my real nieces. Does that mean we're going to live here forever?" questioned Olivia. "It means," said Adrienne, looking around the luxurious house that contrasted sharply with the poverty her daughters had known, "that we need to talk about how we're going to organize our lives from now on." Later, after the girls had fallen asleep in the guest room, exhausted from the day's excitement, Adrienne and William sat on the porch to discuss practical matters. "I can't accept your charity indefinitely," said Adrienne. "I need to find a way to support my daughters with dignity. You don't have to worry about that now. And it's not charity, we're family. William, I appreciate everything you've done, but I have my pride. I've always worked to support my daughters, and I want to continue doing so, then work with me at the company in a dignified position with a fair salary." Adrienne was silent, considering the proposal. "And the house on Flower Street, is it really mine by right?" "Completely. I have all the documents that prove it. Sebastian defrauded the situation for years, but I can regularize everything. I want to go there tomorrow, to see our house, mine and the girls. I want them to grow up in a home that is truly ours, not dependent on anyone's generosity." William understood. Adrienne had lost her autonomy and independence when she was forced to flee. Now she needed to regain control of her own life. "And Sebastian," she asked, "what do you plan to do? Tomorrow morning I'm going to confront him with everything I know. About the fraud at the company, about what he did to you, about everything. He might try to deny it. He might. But now I have your word against his, and I will thoroughly investigate the company's accounts." "William," Adrienne said hesitantly, "there's something else you need to know about Sebastian, something I found out when I was working at the farm." "What is it?" "He has a gambling problem. Betting. I heard his phone conversations in the office sometimes, people collecting debts, threatening. It's possible the money he embezzled wasn't for personal enrichment." "Are you saying he might have lost it all gambling?" "It's possible, which would make the situation even more complicated, because it would mean the stolen money no longer exists." The revelation added a new layer of complexity to the problem. If Sebastian had lost the embezzled money on bets, recovering the funds would be much more difficult. "There's one more thing," continued Adrienne, her voice getting even lower. "At the farm, I heard rumors that Sebastian was involved in other questionable activities, facilitating illegal loans for desperate people, charging exorbitant interest, loan sharking. It seems so, and if it's true, it means he's not just a corrupt accountant, he's a criminal who could be dangerous when cornered." William felt a shiver. If Adrienne was right, confronting Sebastian could be riskier than he imagined, but he couldn't let that man continue to harm his family and other people. "I'll be careful," he promised. "But he needs to pay for what he did." That night, William could barely sleep. In the next room, he could hear Adrienne softly singing to her daughters, the same melody the twins hummed when they were sad. It was the sound of a family mending itself, but also the prelude to a battle that was yet to come. The next morning brought an atmosphere of normality that William's house had not known for a long time. Adrienne woke up early and prepared breakfast for the family, a simple gesture that carried deep meaning for someone who had been deprived of caring for her own daughters for 6 months. Olivia and Sophia helped their mother in the kitchen, chattering excitedly about everything that had happened during her absence. "Mommy, Uncle William took us to buy new clothes," said Sophia, showing off the pink dress she was wearing. "And he gave us our own room, with very soft beds," added Olivia. "He is very good to us," said Sophia, looking at William with genuine affection. "Yes, he is," agreed Adrienne, serving scrambled eggs on the girls' plates. "And now we're all going to live together like a real family." After breakfast, William prepared to go confront Sebastian, but Adrienne stopped him. "I want to go with you," she said. "Adrienne, it could be dangerous if he's really involved in loan sharking." "That's exactly why I need to go. He used me, manipulated me, separated me from my daughters. He deserves to hear what I have to say. And the girls? Paula said she can stay with them this morning. They really liked her yesterday." William hesitated, but recognized the determination in Adrienne's eyes. She needed this confrontation to regain her dignity and courage. "All right, but you stay back and let me talk first." When they arrived at Sebastian's office, they found the nervous secretary at the reception. She informed them that the accountant had arrived very early and was agitated, making several urgent calls. "He knows you're coming," the woman whispered to William. "A call came from the farm last night." William and Adrienne looked at each other. Joe Carter had warned Sebastian about his visit to Santa Clara Farm. The element of surprise was lost. The office door opened before they could knock. Sebastian appeared, visibly worn out, with deep dark circles and wrinkled clothes. He looked like he hadn't slept. "William," he said, avoiding looking at Adrienne, "we need to talk." "Yes, we do," replied William, entering the office followed by Adrienne. "She shouldn't be here," Sebastian protested. "She has every right to be here," replied William, "considering you're the one who forced her to abandon her own daughters." "I didn't force anyone. I offered a work opportunity." "Liar!" exploded Adrienne, finally finding her voice. "You threatened me. You said that if I stayed, you would invent a way to frame me for your own thefts." "What thefts?" Sebastian tried to feign innocence, but his nervousness was obvious. "The embezzlement from the company accounts," said William. "The transfers to your personal accounts, the fake invoices." Adrienne saw everything. She was working illegally, cleaning the office after hours. Anything she claims to have seen can be contested. "Maybe, but I'm going to investigate every transaction from the last 5 years, threatened William, "and I'm sure I'll find enough evidence." Sebastian's face fell. He dropped heavily into his chair, suddenly looking 10 years older. "How much did you steal, Sebastian?" asked William, his voice low but filled with authority. "It wasn't stealing," the accountant muttered. "It was a temporary loan." "A loan? For what?" Sebastian was silent for a long moment, looking at his own trembling hands. "I had debts. Debts I couldn't pay with my salary." "Gambling debts," added Adrienne. "How does she know that?" Sebastian looked at her in surprise. "Because I heard your phone conversations. The collectors were constantly calling the office in recent months." "How much do you owe?" William insisted. 300,000, Sebastian whispered. "Maybe more with the interest." "And how much did you take from the company?" "Approximately 400,000 over the years. Where is that money now? Gone, all gone." Tears began to stream down the old man's face. "I thought I could get it all back, bet more to win back what I had lost. But it only got worse." Adrienne watched the confession with a mixture of anger and pity. The man who had destroyed her family was there, admitting his own destruction. "And the house on Flower Street?" she asked. "Why did you hide that it was ours?" "Because the rent you paid was one of the few sources of clean income I still had. I needed that money to try to control the gambling debts." "You exploited a needy family to finance your addiction," said William with disgust. I know I did terrible things, but you don't understand the pressure I was under. The loan sharks were threatening my family, my wife." "Does your wife know about all this?" asked Adrienne. No, she doesn't know anything. And if she finds out, she'll leave me after 40 years of marriage. At that moment, the office door opened suddenly. Two men entered unceremoniously, one tall and thin, the other short and stout, both with threatening expressions. "Sebastian," said the tall man, "it's time to settle the score." The accountant paled even more, rising from his chair on shaky legs. "Paul, I told you I needed a few more days. You've had too much time, 60 days late. The boss isn't accepting any more excuses." William instinctively positioned himself in front of Adrienne, assessing the situation. The two men were clearly collectors, possibly dangerous. "You're interrupting a private meeting," he said firmly. "And who are you?" asked the stout man, looking William up and down. "I'm the owner of the company where this man works, and I'm here to resolve issues related to the thefts he committed." "Thefts?" The two collectors looked at each other with interest. "What kind of thefts?" "That's none of your business," said Sebastian desperately. "Actually, it is," replied the tall man. "If you have hidden money you didn't tell us about." "I don't have any hidden money. I lost it all gambling. You know that." The tension in the office escalated exponentially. Adrienne moved closer to William, whispering, "I think we should leave." But before they could move, the stout man blocked the door. "Nobody leaves until we understand this situation. If there's stolen money involved, that changes everything." "Listen," said William, trying to stay calm. "You want the money he owes, right? I can make a deal with you." "What kind of deal?" "I'll pay his debt. All of it. In return, you leave him and his entire family alone permanently." The two men looked at each other again, clearly considering the proposal. 350,000, said the tall man, "with interest and late fees." "Done," replied William without hesitation. "William, no," Sebastian protested. "You don't have to do this." "I'm not doing it for you," William replied coldly. "I'm doing it to protect my family and resolve this situation once and for all." The tall man took a cell phone out of his pocket and made a quick call, speaking in a low voice to someone on the other end. After a few minutes, he hung up. "The boss accepts. Bank transfer today. And Sebastian never goes near any gambling house in the region again." "I agree to the terms," said William. After the collectors left with the bank details for the transfer, the office was plunged into a heavy silence. Sebastian remained seated, his face hidden in his hands. "Why did you do that?" he finally asked. "Because despite everything you've done, I don't want to see you dead," replied William. "And because my family needs peace, I will pay you back everything, every cent of the 400,000 I took from the company." "How?" "You have nothing. I'll sell my house, my car, everything, and I'll work until the last day of my life to pay off this debt." Adrienne watched the broken man who had caused her family so much suffering. Part of her felt anger, but another part began to feel pity for this completely defeated human being. "Sebastian," she said finally, "what you did to me and my daughters was unforgivable, but I see that you are also paying a high price for your choices." William looked at Adrienne with admiration. Even after all she had suffered, she could still show compassion for the man who had destroyed her life. 2 weeks had passed since the confrontation at Sebastian's office, and a new routine began to establish itself in the life of the rebuilt family. Adrienne had moved into the house on Flower Street with Olivia and Sophia, but spent her days at William's house, while the necessary renovations were carried out on the property that now officially belonged to her. The yellow house needed a lot of work. Years of neglect had left their mark. Leaks, peeling paint, old electrical wiring. But for Adrienne, each repair represented not just a physical improvement, but a symbol of her recovery and independence. "Mommy, when can we sleep in our house?" Olivia asked one morning, as they watched the masons working on the roof. "In a few weeks, my dear. We want everything to be perfect for you." "I like staying at Uncle William's house too," said Sophia. "Can we visit him always?" "Always, promised Adrienne, smiling at William, who was approaching with fresh coffee. In those 2 weeks, the family ties had strengthened naturally. William had discovered the joy of having a house full of children's voices, laughter, and the constant energy of the twins. Adrienne, for her part, was gradually regaining her self-confidence and the security that she would never again be separated from her daughters. But not everything was rosy. Sebastian had kept his word about selling his assets to pay off the debt to William. His house was put up for sale, his car sold, and he had moved into a small apartment at the back of the city. His wife, Mrs. Martha, had found out about the gambling problems and the fraud, resulting in a painful separation after 4 decades of marriage. He showed up here again yesterday. Paula told William during a visit to the company office, asking to speak with you. He seemed desperate. What did you say to him? That you weren't receiving visits from him? But William, he seems to be going through a very difficult time. He's lost a lot of weight, doesn't seem to be taking care of himself. William sighed. Part of him felt sorry for the man who had been like a father for so many years. Another part still boiled with anger at the manipulation and suffering caused to his family. If he shows up again, you can let him in, but only if it's really urgent. That afternoon, while Adrienne was taking the girls for a routine doctor's appointment, William received an unexpected call from Sebastian's secretary. "Mr. William, you need to come here urgently, Mr. Sebastian." He fainted in the office. "We're taking him to the hospital." The Havenwood hospital was busy when William arrived. He found Sebastian admitted to the emergency ward, connected to machines, looking fragile and aged. The doctor explained that he had suffered from extreme exhaustion combined with dehydration and malnutrition. "He wasn't eating properly," explained Dr. Robert Smith, "and from the tests, he seems to have been under severe emotional stress for a long time. The body just couldn't take it anymore." William stood by the bed, watching the man who had shaped a large part of his adult life. Sebastian woke up a few hours later, confused and disoriented. "William, you came?" "I came. How do you feel?" "Terrible. In every sense." Sebastian tried to sit up in bed, but he was too weak. "I thought you would never come to see me again." "I thought so too. Why did you come then?" William reflected on the question. Why had he come? Anger, pity, a sense of duty. Because despite everything, you were part of my life for 20 years. And because maybe I need to understand some things. What kind of things? How you managed to hide so much from me for so long. How I could trust someone so much who was constantly lying. Sebastian closed his eyes, tears streaming down his thin cheeks. "You trusted me because I was worthy of that trust for many years." The lies started small, William. A small advance on a payment when Martha needed surgery. Then another small amount when my son was unemployed. I always intended to pay it back, but then came the gambling. The gambling started as a desperate attempt to quickly recover the money I had borrowed from the company. A small bet, then another, then another. By the time I realized it, I was addicted and owed much more than I had originally taken. And Adrienne became a problem when she discovered the truth. Adrienne represented the end of everything. If she publicly claimed the house, you would start investigating other properties. And by investigating other properties, you would discover the irregularities in the company's accounts. So you decided to get her out of town. I panicked. I wasn't thinking straight. The addiction had consumed my ability to reason properly. William got up and walked to the hospital window, watching the city traffic below. "Sebastian, there's something I need to tell you. Something I've discovered in the last few days." "What is it?" "Your situation is worse than you imagine. The loan sharks you owed money to. They weren't just local collectors." "What do you mean?" "I did some research after I paid off your debt. They are part of a larger money laundering scheme that has been operating in the region for years. You weren't just in debt from ordinary gambling. You were involved with serious criminals." Sebastian's face paled even more. That means... It means you were very lucky I paid off your debt when I did. If they had found out you were embezzling money from the company, they could have demanded much larger amounts, or worse. My God, Sebastian whispered, I had no idea. That's why you can't go near gambling anymore, Sebastian. It's not just a matter of addiction, it's a matter of survival. At that moment, the room door opened and Adrienne entered, followed by the twins. She had brought the girls to the hospital so they could see that Sebastian was okay, in an attempt to teach forgiveness and compassion. Hi, Mr. Sebastian, said Olivia shyly. Are you sick? Asked Sophia, looking at the medical equipment. Sebastian looked at the two children he had indirectly harmed so much, and the crying he had held back for weeks finally burst out. My dear girls, he sobbed, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for everything I did to you and your mother. Olivia approached the bed and, to everyone's surprise, held the old man's hand. It's okay, Mr. Sebastian. Mommy said that sometimes people do bad things when they are very sad. And are you getting better now? Asked Sophia, with the characteristic innocence of her age. I'm trying to get better, yes. Adrienne watched the scene with emotion. She saw that her daughters had inherited her natural ability to forgive, even after so much suffering. Sebastian, she said, approaching the bed, when you get out of here, come have dinner with us one day. The girls like to take care of people who are sad. Adrienne, I don't deserve your kindness. It's not about what you deserve, it's about what is right to do. William watched his family demonstrate a generosity he was still learning to have. In that moment, he understood that true strength was not in holding grudges, but in the ability to move forward by building something better. Sebastian, he said, when you recover, I want you to work with me again. William, I can't. Not as an accountant, but maybe as a consultant for people with gambling problems. Your experience could help others who are going through the same thing. You would do that? After everything? I would. Because I believe people can change, and because our family believes in second chances. Sebastian looked at the four people around his bed, the man he had betrayed but who still offered redemption, the woman he had persecuted but who offered forgiveness, and the two children he had harmed but who offered unconditional love. I will heal, he promised, his voice firm for the first time in months. From the addiction, from the problems, from everything. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to repair the harm I have caused. 3 months had passed since Sebastian's hospitalization, and life began to find a more stable rhythm for the reunited family. The house on Flower Street had been completely renovated, and Adrienne had finally been able to move in with the twins to what was officially their home. The walls were painted in cheerful colors chosen by the girls, light yellow in the living room, soft pink in their bedrooms, and tranquil blue in Adrienne's room. William visited the house almost every day, sometimes for dinner, other times just to spend a few hours with the nieces who had quickly become the joy of his life. Adrienne had accepted a job in the administration of Sampson Coffee, a dignified position that allowed her to support her daughters with independence while maintaining the close family ties they had discovered. But on that June morning, something disturbed the tranquility they had built. William received a call from Paula, informing him that an unknown woman had shown up at the company asking for Adrienne Sanders, claiming to be her relative. She said her name is Catherine Sanders Miller. Paula explained over the phone. She claims to be Adrienne's cousin and has been looking for her for years. William felt a shiver. Catherine Sanders was the name of his biological mother, who had died when he was 5, or at least that's what he had always believed. This woman. Is she old? No, she's about 45. Graying hair, but she doesn't look like an old lady. Where is she now? Waiting in reception. She said she won't leave until she speaks with Adrienne. William asked Paula to keep the woman at the company and immediately called Adrienne, who was working from home, organizing renovation documents. "Adrienne, you need to come to the company now. There's a woman here who says she's your cousin. Her name is Catherine Sanders." "Catherine Sanders?" Adrienne's voice became tense. "That's impossible. Catherine Sanders was my great-aunt. She passed away many years ago. This woman is 45. Maybe it's another Catherine Sanders from the family, or maybe it's someone trying to take advantage of our situation. William, after all we've been through, I can't trust strangers easily." "I understand. Come here and let's find out together who this woman is and what she wants." An hour later, Adrienne arrived at the company accompanied by the twins, who were on school vacation and had nowhere to stay. William greeted them at the reception, where the mysterious woman was waiting patiently, flipping through a magazine. When she looked up, William was shocked. The resemblance to Adrienne was undeniable. The same bone structure, the same dark eyes, the same face shape. It was as if he were looking at an older version of Adrienne. "You must be Adrienne," the woman said, standing up with emotion. "I'm Catherine Sanders Miller. I'm your mother's sister, Jacqueline Sanders." Adrienne was paralyzed. Her mother, Jacqueline, had died when the twins were babies, and she had always believed she had no living relatives besides her daughters. "My mother never mentioned having a sister," she said cautiously, "because we were separated when we were very young. I was adopted by a family from Chicago when I was 10. Jacqueline stayed here in Havenwood with our aunt, whom you knew as Catherine Sanders." "Our aunt?" Adrienne frowned. "Are you saying there were two Catherine Sanders in the family?" "Yes. I was named in honor of our aunt. When she passed away, I inherited some of her personal documents. That's how I found out I had a sister in Havenwood." William watched the conversation with growing perplexity. If this woman was telling the truth, it meant the family tree they had reconstructed was incomplete. "Why did you take so long to look for your sister?" he asked. "Because I only recently discovered the truth. My adoptive parents told me I was an orphan, that I had no family. It was only when they passed away last year that I found the old documents revealing Jacqueline's existence." "But our mother passed away 4 years ago," said Adrienne, still suspicious. Catherine's face saddened deeply. "I know. When I finally got the address and came to look for her, I found out I was too late. But I also found out she had a daughter. You." "How did you find us?" asked William. "Investigation. I hired a private detective to help me locate Jacqueline's descendants. He was the one who discovered that Adrienne Sanders had mysteriously disappeared a few months ago, but had recently returned and was working at Samson Coffee." Olivia and Sophia, who had been silent throughout the conversation, approached Catherine with childlike curiosity. "Are you our aunt?" asked Olivia. "Great-aunt," Catherine corrected gently. "I'm your grandmother's sister." "We never had a great-aunt before," said Sophia, impressed. Catherine knelt down to be at the girls' level. "And I've never had great-nieces. What beautiful girls you are." Despite her suspicions, Adrienne felt her heart warm, seeing the genuine interaction between Catherine and her daughters. There was something in the way the woman spoke to the children that reminded her of her own mother. "Catherine," she said, "if you really are my aunt, you must have documents to prove it." "I do." Catherine opened a large bag and took out a folder. Birth certificates, old photographs, letters our aunt wrote to my adoptive family, explaining our situation. Adrienne examined the documents carefully, while William looked over her shoulder. Everything seemed authentic. Dates matched, names made sense. Old photographs clearly showed the family resemblance. "There's something else," Catherine said hesitantly. "Something I discovered in our aunt's documents that might interest you." "What is it?" asked William. The property on Flower Street wasn't the only inheritance left by the Sanders family. There is another property, a small farm on the outskirts of Havenwood, that should also have been passed down to the descendants. Adrienne and William looked at each other. More family properties meant more possibilities of fraud by Sebastian. "Where is this farm?" asked Adrian. According to the documents, it's in a rural area near the district of Carmo de Cachoeira. It's a 10-hectare property with an old house. Sebastian never mentioned a second property, William muttered. Who is Sebastian? Asked Catherine. Adrian and William took turns telling the story of the past few months, the discovery of family ties, the accountant's fraud, the forced separation, and the family's reunion. Catherine listened with growing attention and indignation. This man has harmed our entire family, she said when they finished. And if there's a second property he hid, who knows how many other irregularities there are. What do you suggest? Asked William. That we go to this farm together to investigate the situation. If it really exists and belongs to our family, we need to claim it properly. And what if it's another attempt at fraud? Questioned Adrian. What if you're not really our relative? Catherine smiled patiently. Then you'll find that out when you investigate my documents more deeply. But Adrian, look at me. Look at your daughters. Don't you see the resemblance? Don't you feel the family connection? Adrian studied the woman's face before her. There really was something familiar, something that went beyond physical appearance, a way of speaking, gestures that reminded her of her mother, an energy that seemed to belong to the family. All right, she decided. We'll investigate, but carefully. And if this property really exists and is ours, said William, we'll have to confront Sebastian one more time. He's recovering well from his addiction treatment, commented Adrian. Maybe it's time to test if his recovery is genuine. That afternoon, after Catherine checked into a nearby hotel and the twins went home with Adrian, William stayed in his office researching the mentioned property. If Catherine was telling the truth, they were about to discover that the web of secrets and fraud was even more complex than they had imagined. And if she was lying, they could be walking into a new trap that would jeopardize the stability they had worked so hard to achieve. The next morning brought revelations that no one expected. William had spent the night investigating at the regional records offices about the property mentioned by Catherine, and what he discovered left him deeply disturbed. The Santo Antonio farm really existed, had been registered in the Sanders family name for over 50 years, and had been systematically leased out by Sebastian for the past 2 decades. Even more shocking, the lease payments had never been passed on to the rightful heirs of the property. For 20 years, Sebastian had pocketed approximately $8,000 a month from the farm's lease, totaling nearly $2 million in today's value. $2 million, repeated Adrian, incredulous, when William told her the discovery over the phone. How is it possible that he hid so much money for so long? Bank accounts in the company's name, personal investments he made look like corporate investments, gradual transfers that went unnoticed. He's been an accountant for decades. He knew exactly how to mask the financial movements. And where is that money now? That's the question we need to ask Sebastian, in person. An hour later, William, Adrian, and Catherine were heading to the small apartment where Sebastian had been living since selling his assets. The accountant had been discharged from the hospital 2 weeks ago and was attending support meetings for gambling addicts, trying to gradually rebuild his life. When they opened the door, they found a visibly different Sebastian. He had gained a healthy amount of weight. His eyes were clearer, and for the first time in months, he seemed genuinely at peace with himself. But that peace shattered instantly when he saw the 3 visitors. William, Adrienne, he greeted nervously. I wasn't expecting visitors. Sebastian, this is Catherine Sanders Miller, Adrian's aunt, and we're here to talk about the Santo Antonio farm. The name of the property had the effect of a bomb. Sebastian turned pale, needing to lean against the wall. How did you know about the farm? The question isn't how we knew, said Adrian firmly. The question is why you hid its existence from our family for 20 years. Sebastian gestured for them to sit in the small, modestly furnished living room. His hands trembled visibly as he prepared coffee, trying to buy time to organize his thoughts. The farm's situation is complicated, he began. Complicated? How? Insisted Catherine. I'm a lawyer, Mr. Fisher. I understand complicated situations. William looked at Catherine in surprise. She hadn't mentioned being a lawyer the day before. You're a lawyer? He asked. Specializing in family law and successions. That's how I was able to trace our family tree and find out about the properties. Sebastian slumped into a chair, defeated. The farm had been generating tax problems for years. Unpaid taxes, fines, threats of seizure. When I took over the management of the assets after Mrs. Ann's death, I discovered that the Sanders family hadn't paid property taxes for decades, so you decided to lease it to pay off the debts, asked Adrian. Initially, yes. I leased the land to a local coffee producer and used the money to pay off the back taxes. But then you started pocketing the lease money, completed William. It wasn't immediate. For the first few years, I really used the money for property maintenance and tax payments. But when my personal problems started, when the gambling addiction intensified, you started using the family's money to finance your bets, said Catherine with disdain. $2 million over 20 years, added William, money that belonged to the Sanders family. Sebastian buried his face in his hands. I know there's no excuse. I know I committed serious crimes, but you need to understand that I didn't plan this. It was a gradual escalation from small misappropriations until it became something gigantic. Where is that money now? Asked Catherine directly. Gone, or lost in bets over the years. All of it, she insisted. $2 million just disappeared in gambling. Sebastian hesitated for a moment too long. Sebastian, said William in a low but threatening voice, after everything we've been through, after I paid your debts and offered you a second chance, are you still lying? It's not exactly a lie. Then what is it? Some of the money was lost in gambling, yes, but another part... Sebastian paused, taking a deep breath. Another part is invested. Invested where? In real estate. I bought a few small properties in the area using the lease money. 3 houses in downtown Havenwood and a commercial lot. The confession left everyone silent. Catherine was the first to recover. Are these properties in your name? Yes. So you used the Sanders family money to build a personal estate. I always intended to return everything once I managed to pay off my gambling debts. With what money? Adrian exploded. You owed $300,000 to loan sharks, had lost everything gambling, and you still planned to return $2 million? I thought I could win it back by betting more. Sebastian, William interrupted. You are going to transfer all of these properties to Adrian's name. Today. William, I can't do that. If I transfer everything, I won't have anywhere to live. I won't have any source of income. You should have thought of that before you stole from our family, said Catherine coldly. But there's a complication, Sebastian continued desperately. One of the houses is rented to a family with 3 small children. If I transfer the property now, they could be evicted. And what is the rental agreement? Asked Catherine. There's no formal contract. It's an informal agreement. The rent is very low because the family can't afford high amounts. Adrian looked at William and Catherine. The situation was becoming more complex with each revelation. Who is this family? She asked. Robert and Marissa Sanders with 3 children. He works as a mechanic. She is a housekeeper. They are honest people going through financial difficulties. Sanders. Catherine frowned. Are they our relatives too? I don't think so. It's a common surname in the region. Even so, said Adrian, if they are honest people paying rent honestly, we are not going to harm them because of your mistakes, Sebastian. William watched Adrian with growing admiration. Even after discovering she had been robbed of $2 million, she was still concerned about not harming an innocent family. Sebastian, said Catherine, you will transfer 3 properties to Adrian immediately. The 4th, where this Sanders family lives, will also be transferred, but with the condition that they can continue to live there for as long as they need, in paying the same symbolic rent, and if they one day want to buy the house, then they will have the first option to buy for whatever value they can afford. That's more generosity than I deserve, Sebastian muttered. It's not generosity, replied Adrian. It's justice, and it's the last chance you'll have to do the right thing. If you try to deceive us again, added William, there will be no more forgiveness or second chances. Sebastian nodded, defeated but also, in a way, relieved. Carrying the weight of so many secrets for so long had been a constant psychological torture. Is there anything else you're hiding from us? Asked Catherine. Other properties, other accounts, other investments made with family money? No, I swear there isn't. This is everything. You'd better hope so, she said, because I'm going to investigate every transaction you've made in the last 20 years, and if I find any more irregularities, you won't. This is everything, I promise. That afternoon, the four of them went to the records office to begin the process of transferring the properties. It would be a complex procedure that would take a few weeks to complete, but finally, justice was beginning to be served for the Sanders family. As they were leaving the office, Catherine pulled Adrian and William aside for a private conversation. There's something I haven't told you yet, she said. Something I discovered in our aunt's documents, but I hesitated to mention because it seemed impossible. What is it? Asked Adrian. There may be one more heir to the Sanders family, someone none of us know, but who has a legitimate right to the properties. William's blood ran cold. One more heir would mean more complications, more divisions, more legal problems. Who would this heir be, he asked. According to the documents, our Aunt Catherine had a son 50 years ago. A son who was given up for adoption and was never mentioned in the family again. The revelation hit Adrienne like a lightning bolt. A son. That would mean... It would mean that William might have a biological cousin he never knew, and that this cousin could have legal rights over all the properties we are trying to recover. The revelation about a possible unknown cousin kept William awake all night as he stared at his bedroom ceiling, 1,000 questions hammered in his mind. If there really was another direct heir of Catherine Sanders, the entire recovery of the family properties could be legally challenged. Worse still, this stranger could claim rights to Samson Coffee, since the company had been partially financed with inheritance money. The next morning, Catherine arrived early at William's house, carrying an old box of documents she had retrieved from the apartment where she kept her deceased aunt's belongings. I spent the night reviewing everything again, she said, placing the box on the living room table. There are letters, certificates, photographs, and most importantly, there's the name of the family that adopted our aunt's son. Adrienne arrived soon after, with Olivia and Sophia, who ran to hug William as they did every morning. The normality of the gesture contrasted dramatically with the tension that dominated the adults. "Mommy is worried," Olivia commented, with the sharp perception of children. She woke up several times during the night. "It's about family stuff, my dear," Adrienne explained. "Sometimes adults have to solve complicated problems." "Like when Mr. Sebastian was sick?" asked Sophia. "Something like that, yes." Catherine opened the box and began to pull out documents yellowed with time. Among them, a birth certificate dated 1974 recorded the birth of John Sanders, son of Catherine Sanders, given up for adoption to the Miller family. John Sanders Miller read William aloud, born on March 15, 1974. "He would be 50 today," calculated Adrian. "About your age. And according to this adoption documentation," continued Catherine, "the family that adopted him lived in Kings Harbor. The adoptive parents' names, Charles Miller and Maria Mendez Miller." "Did you try to look for this family?" asked William. "I tried, but Charles and Maria Miller passed away a few years ago, and I couldn't track what happened to John." "Maybe he changed his name," suggested Adrian, "or moved far from the region." At that moment, William's phone rang. It was Paula, from the company. "William, there's a man here who wants to talk to you urgently." He says it's about family matters, and he has important information about the Sanders family. William's heart raced. What's his name? John Miller. He seems very nervous and said he saw you all at the records office yesterday. William looked at Catherine and Adrian in astonishment. John Miller is at my company. He saw us at the records office yesterday. It could be a coincidence, said Catherine, but her voice showed she didn't believe it. Or it could be the cousin we're looking for, Adrian murmured. 40 minutes later, the three adults and the twins were in the Sampson coffee meeting room, watching a man of about 50, with graying hair and familiar dark eyes, who was pacing nervously back and forth. When John Miller turned and saw William, they both froze. The resemblance between them was undeniable, not just in physical features, but in posture, in the way they moved, even in the expression of their eyes. My God, John whispered, it's like I'm looking in a mirror. Who are you? Asked William, still processing the shocking resemblance. My name is John Sanders Miller. I'm a retired teacher and I've lived my whole life in Kings Harbor. 3 months ago, I discovered I was adopted and that my biological mother's name was Catherine Sanders. Catherine slowly stood up from her chair. Catherine Sanders, are you sure? I have all the documents. John took a folder from his pocket. And yesterday, when I saw you at the records office talking about Sanders family properties, I decided to investigate. How did you see us at the records office? Asked Adrian. I work part-time as a legal consultant for some records offices in the region. I was there on other business when I heard you mention the names Catherine Sanders and Santo Antonio Farm. John opened his folder and showed documents that were clearly authentic. Original birth certificate, adoption papers, old correspondence between his biological mother and the family that adopted him. According to these documents, he said, my biological mother, Catherine Sanders, was the sister of Anne Sanders Sampson. That would make me the cousin of... He looked at William, of someone adopted by the Sampson family. My cousin, said William in a hoarse voice. I was adopted by the Sampsons when I was 2. My biological mother was Catherine Sanders. The same Catherine Sanders. The same. John slumped into a chair, the revelation hitting him with full force. Does that mean we're biological brothers? Half-brothers, corrected Catherine, consulting both their documents. Sons of the same mother, but different fathers. The twins, who had watched the entire conversation in silence, approached John with curiosity. Are you our uncle too? Asked Olivia. It seems so, my dear, replied John, moved. It seems so. Adrian watched the scene with a mix of emotion and apprehension. The family was growing again, but that also meant more legal and emotional complexity. John, she said, did you come here because of the properties? To claim your rights as an heir? Actually, he replied, surprising everyone, I came here to renounce them. What do you mean? Asked William. I'm a retired teacher. I have a simple and comfortable life. My house is paid off, my retirement is enough for my needs, I don't need properties or inheritances. But they are yours by right, insisted Catherine. Legal right, perhaps, but not moral right. John looked at Olivia and Sophia, who were playing quietly while the adults talked. These children grew up in poverty because they were deprived of their inheritance. Adrienne was forced to abandon her own daughters because of fraud involving these properties. You suffered, you fought, you sacrificed. And you didn't? Asked William. I had a good life, loving adoptive parents, a quality education, a stable career. I never suffered because of the inheritance, because I never knew it existed. John got up and walked to the window, looking at the mountains surrounding Havenwood. Besides, he continued, I discovered something else about our biological mother. Something you need to know. What is it? Asked Adrian and Catherine simultaneously. Catherine Sanders did not pass away when we were children. She lived until she was 70 and spent the last 20 years of her life in a nursing home in Kings Harbor. always asking about the children she had been forced to give up for adoption. The silence that followed was devastating. William sat down heavily, processing the information that his biological mother had lived for decades, longing for a reunion that never happened. "How did you find that out?" he asked in a broken voice. "When I started investigating my origin, I found records from the nursing home. Catherine Sanders was admitted there in 1995 and passed away in 2015. For all those years, she kept photographs of babies she said were her children, and always told the nurses about 2 boys who would one day come back for her." Tears began to stream down William's face. His biological mother had spent 20 years waiting for children who didn't even know she was alive. "The nurses showed me a diary she kept," continued John, taking an old notebook from his folder. "For years she wrote letters to us, letters that were never sent, but that express all the love of a mother who never stopped thinking about her children." John handed the diary to William, who opened it with trembling hands. The handwriting was delicate, the words filled with longing and regret. "To my dear sons, wherever you may be, today I complete another year without you. I know I made the right decision by giving you to families who could provide what I was unable to offer, but my heart aches every day. That's why," said John, his voice firm despite the emotion, "I want the properties to stay with you. With the family our mother chose to care for one of her sons, and with the descendants of the family she loved." "John," said William, getting up to hug the brother he had just met, "you are family now, regardless of properties or inheritances. And you will always be welcome in our home," added Adrienne. "The girls need to get to know their Uncle John better." Catherine watched the family reunion with tears in her eyes. "Our aunt would be proud," she said. "After decades of separation and suffering, the Sanders family has finally reunited." That afternoon, as John played with the twins in the yard and Catherine organized the legal documents to formalize the property transfers, William and Adrienne talked about how their lives had changed in just a few months. "When those 2 girls ran towards me that night," said William, "I never imagined I was about to discover an entire family I didn't know existed, and I never imagined that the man who lived in the house across the street was my cousin and would become the most important person in my daughter's lives." "In our lives," he corrected, "because now we are truly a family." As they watched Olivia and Sophia teaching John how to play with the dolls they had received, they both understood that they had found something much more valuable than properties or inheritances. They had found themselves, each other, and the true meaning of family. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment what you thought of my story with a rating from 0 to 10, and thank you very much.